Okay, so the DOJ just deleted a federal report on murdered Indigenous women, one produced under a law Trump himself signed. And when Congress asked why, the acting Attorney General of the United States said he didn't know. That's Senator Lisa Murkowski grilling acting AG Todd Blanche at a Senate appropriations hearing on the fiscal year 2027 DOJ budget. Watch what happens when she pins him on that vanishing report. Hit subscribe before this starts.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Attorney General, thank you for being here this morning and responding to our questions. I want to follow on a couple that have been asked with regards to the Department of Justice's state and local law enforcement programs. $1.2 billion in proposed cuts. We're looking at it very carefully because many of these grants and programs have significant impact on our state, small population, large area to deal with. The budget also calls for consolidation of the Office of Violence Against Women, the Community-Oriented Policing Services, and the OJP programs. Is the Office of Tribal Justice one of the offices that are also intended to be consolidated?
No, we're just consolidating the grant component, so OJP, COPS, and then OVD. And by the way, we're not combining them. We're just making them more efficient. So they will still maintain their own independence and brand, for lack of a better word. But what we heard from the field is that there were inappropriate inconsistencies and inefficiencies in having three separate kind of bureaucracies running each of those programs, so that's what we're trying to fix.
Don't disagree with wanting to reduce bureaucracies. My interest is making sure that the fidelity of these grants and the availability to very rural and oftentimes just very high cost because of what we're dealing with out there, that they do not get overlooked, because when you have cuts to the level that you're proposing, one has to assume that, okay, you can talk about reducing the bureaucracy and just what the program itself might look like. But again, my interest is making sure that this much needed assistance is still pushed down to the very, very local levels.
Senator, I assure you that the rural communities, and I appreciate that they have the most challenges applying for grants because of just the way they're structured.
Lack of capacity.
Of course, and there's obviously, I forget the exact percentage, but a large percentage of our grants do go to rural communities, as they should, and rural police departments, as they should. And we are going to continue to do that. I mean, the COPS office is required to distribute half of the grants to rural communities. Right. But just, and I don't want to take up all your time, Senator, but that's one of the reasons why we're trying to make it more efficient, because the field said, especially rural communities, big cities don't have issues applying for grants. They have a bunch of people that can do it. And so, yes, we are very focused on that in tribal justice space, but also in the grant space.
Well, know that we're watching this one very carefully. I understand that in response to Senator Collins, you acknowledged 25% cut to the Office on Violence Against Women. I was very involved in that reauthorization, and within that, we provide that OVW may not be subsumed by another grant-making component within DOJ. So we want to make sure that, again, DOJ is going to maintain OVW's statutory responsibilities and how they move forward with their grant-making, and not losing out on that subject.
We will, and we're aware of that. Yes, ma'am.
Let me ask about the Not Invisible Act. This was legislation that I introduced some years ago. It became law. May 5th is the day that we recognize as Missing and Murdered Indigenous Persons Awareness Day. We had a big roundtable that Senator Sullivan helped to organize just a couple weeks ago. I had a lot of the folks from your department, along with Alaska State and local, as well as tribal. One of the things that kept coming up was the commission issued its final report. I thought it was pretty substantive. They issued it November 1 of 2023 after great testimony and consultation all across Indian country. But then it was removed, the report was removed very early on in the second Trump administration, and the related materials have been removed from DOJ and the Department of Interior websites. So people keep asking me, where'd it go, why, what is happening? And we tried to get further information to that, again, up in Anchorage a couple weeks ago. So the question to you is, why was the report taken down? When will it be restored? And more importantly, what concrete steps is DOJ taking with the Department of Others and others to implement the recommendations? We don't want the work of this really important commission to just kind of sit and be ignored.
Yes, so I don't have an answer as to why it was taken down, but I will get back to you promptly. I will tell you.
I would appreciate that, yeah.
And your big picture question, we are on the same page when it comes to tribal justice and the work that we have to do with our Native American community and making sure that we're giving them the resources, the law enforcement. I've visited 2 so far as the Deputy Attorney General. My staff has gone out to multiples, to northern New York, the Dakotas, Oklahoma, and we'll continue to do that. I think that at the end of the day, it is a funding and training issue that is our responsibility, and I recognize that, and it's a priority.
Well, and we've seen positive signals in the first Trump administration. That was when Operation Lady Justice was stood up. I think that is good. We need to continue on that. You've put good people tasked to this, but this is where it gets confusing, because when you have a public-facing website that helps people navigate through some of the reporting and the lack of data, that's where we could use a little help. So if you can get back with me on that, I would appreciate it.
I will, Senator.
Thank you.
Murkowski comes in with a specific concern. The DOJ is consolidating OVW, COPS, and OJP grant offices into one operation. Her warning, rural Alaska communities have almost no administrative capacity as it is. Make the process harder, and they stop applying. All right, let's unpack that. This isn't about red tape for its own sake. Consolidate 3 grant pipelines into one. And even if the money technically stays on paper, you've created one bottleneck. And for tribal councils running on limited staff with 0 dedicated grant writers, one bottleneck means 0 funding. Not less, 0, because they stop applying before they finish the form. The DOJ's counter. Acting AG Todd Blanche says this is about efficiency, not cuts. 3 bureaucracies were creating, in his words, significant inconsistencies. Streamlining admin operations, he says, will actually make it easier for tribal entities to access funding. Efficient for who, though? A consolidated system built for a city police department is not built for a village of 400 with one person handling all administrative work. Blanche says tribal justice is a top priority. Murkowski says the structure is moving in the opposite direction. One of them is looking at a spreadsheet. The other is looking at the actual communities. Then Senator Cortez Masto of Nevada pivots to something worse. The DOJ didn't just restructure grants. It removed the final report of the Not Invisible Act Commission, titled Not One More, entirely from its public website. Years of work, gone. The Not Invisible Act was signed in 2020. A commission was created specifically to investigate the missing and murdered Indigenous people crisis. Years of work, hundreds of testimonies, a final report, and the DOJ took it offline. Cortez Masto called it insulting. Yeah, that is the appropriate response. Why? According to Newsweek, the DOJ confirmed the report was swept up in an administrative review tied to an executive order targeting DEI content. A report on Native American murders, categorized as a DEI document, removed from public access. I could not write this if I tried. And I write commentary for a living. Let's be precise. The Not Invisible Act was signed by Trump in October 2020 with bipartisan support. The commission it created compiled 250 testimonies from survivors, families, and law enforcement across tribal lands. The report makes public safety recommendations for an active murder crisis. The DOJ's justification for removing it: a DEI executive order. That report contains zero DEI programming. It is a public safety document about murders. That's not debatable. It's documented. Tribal leaders aren't going quiet. Indigenous organizations across the country are calling for immediate restoration. The stakes are concrete: 250 testimonies, years of policy recommendations, all offline, and local MMIP response efforts are being directly hampered because communities can't access the tools meant to guide them. Here's where the hypocrisy sharpens. The deleted report was produced under a Trump-signed law by a bipartisan commission documenting murders on federal trust lands. The same administration flagging it as DEI content is the one claiming to be the party of law and order. You can't erase the data on where crimes are happening and still call yourself tough on crime, like pulling the fire alarm log because the building inspector might embarrass you. And Murkowski goes back at Blanche directly. Why was the MMIP database removed from DOJ websites, and when will it be restored? Blanche committed to investigating. He did not have an answer. Murkowski put it plainly: the removal is creating confusion and actively impeding tribal law enforcement efforts. Here is the moment. The acting attorney general, under oath at a Senate hearing, does not know why his own department removed a federal report on Indigenous murders. That is an admission. Either someone did it without his knowledge, which means he has zero visibility into his own agency, or he knows and doesn't want to say. Pick whichever one makes you feel better. Neither answer is good. Murkowski got it on the record. There is now a paper trail. The bigger picture at this hearing: members from both parties agreed that funding and training are the primary bottlenecks for tribal law enforcement. The DOJ's response to that bipartisan consensus has been to consolidate grant offices and remove the data that supports the argument for more resources. Zoom out. In one hearing, a Republican from Alaska and a Democrat from Nevada both hammer the same acting AG on the same set of issues: grant consolidation that walls off the most vulnerable communities. A public safety report deleted under a DEI order it has nothing to do with. An acting AG who can't explain any of it. Here's the line if someone brings this up: the Trump administration removed a federal report on murdered Indigenous women, created under a law Trump himself signed, and the acting AG said he didn't know why. That's documented. That's the receipt. Hit like, subscribe, share it with someone who needs to see it. I'll catch you in the next one.